What's going on, everyone? So, Scream 4 was supposed to be the second coming of a trilogy, and we were supposed to get two more films, but unfortunately, with Wes's passing, they never came to fruition. And I always kind of wondered what would the story have been continued had Wes not passed and they continued that story, because I assume that Scream 5 is going to be it's a non-continuation, but hopefully we get some light as to what happened in between. And even the original Scream 4 story was supposed to have a completely different ending. I mean, Jill essentially gets away with it. Sydney's fate is sort of up in the air, and you get a sort of cliffhanger ending. And though we didn't get that, you got a semi conclusive ending with Jill pretty much dead. As far as we know, I highly doubt that they'll change that. But also, you kind of have this like left in the air of, is she still a hero, or did it come to light her evil acts, how she took up the Ghostface mantle? And that's something that I've always wanted to hear. And I hope that Scream 5 continues that. And that's what I want to talk about today. But before we get started, be sure to like this video. It helps me out a lot. Lets me know that you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, followed by the bell notification so you never miss an upload. So, Scream 5 is obviously going to be its own film, and thus Scream 4 will be a sort of standalone in a lot of ways. I've even made a video talking about how I think over time it could become a lost Scream film in a lot of ways, just on the simple fact that you have the original trilogy. If Scream 5 is successful and they continue with the trilogy of that, then you have the second trilogy, and then you have just Scream 4 kind of by itself. And whether you loved it or not, I just think over time it's going to be the film that's not talked about as much. You're going to have the original trilogy, the new trilogy, and then people are going to be like, oh yeah, and Scream 4 type thing, if you get what I'm saying. But my hope is that with Scream 5, we will get a conclusive story to that. Like, I know that they've talked about a lot of focus on the 1996 original Scream, so I'm curious to see how much they sort of brush over and kind of don't make intricate parts to this film. I mean, obviously you have the original trilogy, but it sounds like they're going to make Scream 1996 sort of the main focus. Like, even the flashback scenes are said to be surrounded in that. So we'll probably get a lot of, Randy, Billy, Stu, maybe some Tatum stuff, like, all of the original casts. And I would assume that you're going to touch on certain parts, maybe certain storylines, certain elements of the other films, but I don't think 2 and 3 are going to be huge parts. And 4, I think it's very likely that they kind of just brush over that because, again, it is sort of a standalone. The one thing that I hope that they don't do, though, is just completely forget about it. Because it is said, it hasn't been concrete, but it's said that Scream 4 and 5, we're going to have that time lapse. Now, so that would mean there would be a 10-year, maybe 8 or 9-year, given when they actually started, production and film and everything. So let's say it's even an 8-year gap. I want that explanation, like what happened in between. Like, I hope they don't just pick up and just run with their story. I hope we get, even in dialogue, some sort of information as to like what happened with Jill. Like, is to this day she still a sort of hero, or did they actually finally, bring everything to light and say, hey? Because I could see them just kind of like, you know what? Sydney looks at it as like she's family, she was all messed up, but what's done is done, what's happened has happened. Let's sort of move on and just let the narrative be what it is. Or did they actually say, like, no, like, hey, look, she is evil. She was behind it all. She was the evil person. I could see Dewey in them, especially Dewey, given he's the sheriff. He's kind of obligated to expose the truth. And I want to know what that time frame. I want to know what happened after. I would even love for them to briefly pick up right after 4. Maybe give us like a quick like aftermath, or even start the film with like news coverage, like how they ended Scream 4, but the news coverage is filling in the aftermath of like, this is whatever news, and it turns out that Jill Roberts turned out to be the actual Ghostface killer, and she's not the, and kind of give us like little like like maybe even like in the opening credits or something. You get the quick flashes of just like news reports and TVs flooding and telling us the dialogue and the story that happened up to that point. I really think that we deserve that. Given that we're not going to get that Scream 4 trilogy and we're going to get this new trilogy, which is fine. I get it. I understand. But don't just overlook what has been in the past and just focus on 1996. And I get it. Like, this Scream 5 is being compared a lot to the Halloween 18. Everyone's kind of, because they kind of retconned what has happened and took over from 1. And the way it's kind of been said, I can understand why people are comparing the two. Sort of the information that has been released, it kind of makes sense that, yeah, like, this is very similar. They're going in a very similar direction. But I think the last thing they want to do is be compared to Halloween, because they're not. And 2, they're not retconning anything. Like they said, this is a continuation. This is just the start of their own thing. And I think that that's an important element, because if you are going to not reboot or retcon anything, then you need to incorporate everything. Don't just leave out some, have it fluid within the story. Don't just be plugging in random Scream stuff just for the sake of plugging it in. Like, you need to actually have, fluidity in your story, but don't just pretend like everything else didn't happen other than Scream 1. And I get it. That's your primary focus. This is named after that Scream, and you're sort of continuing that legacy, that story, and sort of getting back to the roots that made that Scream so successful. I'm all for that. Let's do it. Like, I'm rallying around the troops. But again, let's not forget the past, and don't just leave things up in the air to where we're like, so what? Like, what happened with all that? Maybe I'm the only one that feels that way. As always, this is a discussion. So let me know what you think down in the comments below, because I just feel like I want to know what happened after. Like, what was the end result, basically. Like, I don't want them to just sort of pick up Scream 5 and just run away with their story and we don't get anything about it. So that's something that I feel like we need that sort of closure, I guess. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Would you like to see that closure as well? Or are you like, nah, like whatever, what it is, just focus on this, do the flashbacks, do whatever. So join the discussion down in the comments below. And if you haven't yet, be sure to like this video. It helps me out a lot. It lets me know that you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. And if you haven't yet, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, follow by the bell notification so you never miss an upload. I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.